They pulled a quiet mother off a plane, so her billionaire daughter pulled $5 billion from their future. Martha Ellis was a kind, gentle woman in her 70s. She had lived a peaceful life as a schoolteacher for over 40 years, helping children learn and grow with patience and care. After retiring, she enjoyed quiet days, reading books, gardening, and spending time with her grandchildren. Her daughter, Ava Ellis, was her pride and joy. Ava had grown up watching her mother work hard, remain honest, and always do the right thing. Martha's simple values had shaped Ava into one of the most powerful businesswomen in the country, a CEO of a massive investment firm that handled billions of dollars. One sunny morning, Martha was on her way to visit Ava in New York. Ava had booked her mother a first-class ticket on a well-known airline. She wanted her mother to travel in comfort like she deserved. It was not the first time Martha had flown, but this was the most luxurious experience she'd ever had. Dressed in her usual soft cardigan, with a warm smile on her face and a book tucked in her purse, she arrived at the airport early and calmly made her way through security. At the gate, everything seemed normal. The airline staff scanned her ticket, smiled, and wished her a good flight. She boarded the plane with other first-class passengers, placed her bag gently in the overhead compartment, and settled into her wide, soft seat near the window. She felt relaxed and happy, looking forward to hugging her daughter again after several months apart. She sipped water, looked around, and smiled politely at the flight attendant who walked by. But just minutes before the doors were about to close, something changed. Two airline staff members, one man and one woman, walked toward her with serious expressions. They didn't greet her or smile. The man said, "Ma'am, we need to speak with you. Can you please come with us?" Confused, she looked around, unsure if they were speaking to her. She pointed to herself and asked, "Me?" The woman nodded stiffly and said, "Yes, please step off the plane." Martha's heart began to pound. "Is something wrong?" she asked. Standing slowly and holding on to the seat in front of her for balance, the staff didn't answer directly. "We just need to clarify something with your ticket." Their voices were cold, firm, and without kindness. Passengers around her turned to look. Whispers began. She felt dozens of eyes on her, as if she had done something wrong. Her hands trembled slightly as she gathered her purse and stepped into the narrow aisle. The flight attendant near the door didn't say anything either. Martha was walked off the plane in silence, her head lowered in confusion and shame. At the gate, she was met by two uniformed airport security officers. One of them asked for her boarding pass and ID again, even though she had already shown them earlier. She quietly handed over the documents. She asked, "May I ask, what's the issue?" One officer looked at her and said, "Your ticket seems suspicious. We had to make sure it was legitimate." That word suspicious stabbed her like a knife. Suspicious? Why? She hadn't caused any trouble. She hadn't raised her voice. She had done nothing but quietly sit in her seat. She wore a soft pink sweater, simple shoes, and her hair tied back in a bun. What about her seemed suspicious? She asked again, "Is something wrong with my ticket?" The staff member looked at the paper in his hand and replied, "No, it appears valid now. You may reboard." But it wasn't that simple. They didn't apologize. They didn't explain. They didn't smile. And worst of all, they didn't treat her like a respected human being. They treated her like a problem that needed to be removed and checked. By the time they told her she could get back on the plane, the doors had closed. The flight had left without her. Martha stood at the gate, shocked and heartbroken. Her hands shook as she held her phone. Passengers and staff walked by without noticing her pain. A few people stared but said nothing. She sat down slowly in a corner chair and called her daughter, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Ava," she said softly into the phone. "They took me off the plane." Ava, in the middle of a board meeting with top-level investors, froze when she heard those words. "What do you mean they took you off?" she asked. "They said my ticket was suspicious. They made me get off the plane. I didn't argue, I just did what they asked. But they didn't let me back on." The plane left. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Then Ava spoke slowly, carefully hiding the fury boiling inside her. "Are you okay, Mama? I'm fine, Martha whispered, just confused and embarrassed. Ava told her mother to stay at the airport and said she would handle everything. She ended the call, stood up, and walked out of the meeting room. Her assistant followed, sensing that something serious had happened. Ava didn't yell. She didn't break anything, but her silence was louder than any explosion. Back at the airport, Martha sat quietly, trying to make sense of it all. She wasn't someone who demanded special treatment. She never acted like her daughter was a powerful CEO. She didn't wear designer clothes or expensive jewelry. She lived a humble life and believed in kindness. But what happened to her felt deeply unfair. She couldn't help but wonder if she looked different. If she had a different skin color, would they have treated her the same way? They have pulled a white elderly woman out of first class for a ticket check? Would they have said suspicious if her hair had been straight, or if her clothes had looked more like what they expected? That word haunted her. A few people nearby had noticed what happened. One young woman, who had also been on the plane, posted a short video on social media of Martha being escorted off. She wrote, "This lady was in first class. She was calm and quiet. No one knows why they pulled her off, but it didn't feel right." The video started gaining attention, with people commenting about racial profiling and unfair treatment. By the time Ava received the video from her assistant and watched it, her decision was already made. She wouldn't scream, she wouldn't beg, but she also wouldn't stay silent. The airline had no idea who they had humiliated. They had no idea that Martha Ellis was more than just a passenger. She was the mother of the woman who had the power to change their future. But at that moment, Martha wasn't thinking about power or money. She was thinking about how she had felt like a criminal, just for sitting in a seat her daughter had lovingly arranged for her. She had followed every rule, carried all the correct documents, smiled at every staff member, and, yet still, she was treated like she didn't belong. It wasn't just about a plane or a ticket, it was about dignity. It's about how a simple, kind, elderly woman could be made to feel like she was invisible, like her presence was a mistake. As the hours passed, she sat quietly, waiting for her daughter's team to book another flight. Her eyes stayed on the floor. She wasn't angry. She wasn't loud. But her silence carried the weight of a million other people who had faced the same kind of quiet injustice and never got a chance to speak about it. Little did she know, the day's quiet insult would soon explode into a story that the whole world would hear, a story where one woman's tears turned into a billion-dollar decision, a story where justice would not be silent. Ava Ellis was not an ordinary woman. She was the kind of person who didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Her calm, steady presence made even the loudest rooms quiet down. She had built her career from the ground up, not by being lucky, but by being smart, focused, and deeply driven. As the CEO of one of the most powerful investment firms in the world, Ava was responsible for managing over $40 billion. People listened when she spoke. Governments listened. CEOs of global companies listened. Her name was known in boardrooms across Wall Street and beyond. But no amount of money or power could prepare her for the phone call she received that morning. She had just stepped into a high-level meeting with several international investors. The room was filled with men in dark suits and women in tailored business dresses. Numbers flashed on screens. Coffee cups sat on polished tables. It was business as usual, but then Ava's phone buzzed. She saw the name Mom flashing across the screen. That alone was strange. Her mother rarely called during meetings. "Something must have been wrong," Ava answered, trying not to sound too worried. What she heard froze her heart. "Mama, what happened?" she asked again after her mother's trembling voice explained what the airline had done. Her hands clenched the edge of the table as she listened. Her mother's words were soft, but filled with pain. "They said my ticket looked suspicious. They asked me to get off the plane. I didn't argue. I just followed them. But they didn't even let me back on." Ava felt a quiet storm rise inside her. Her voice was steady, but her eyes had changed. "Did they explain why?" she asked. "No," Martha replied. "They just checked the ticket, looked at my ID again, and told me I could board. But by then, the flight was already gone." Ava took a deep breath. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm not hurt. Just Ashamed, her mother whispered. That was the moment something inside Ava snapped, but not in a loud or messy way. It was like a switch flipped. She had faced discrimination before, hidden behind polite smiles and fake explanations. She had worked twice as hard to prove she belonged in rooms where people looked surprised to see a black woman in charge. Now, they had hurt the one person she loved most. Her mother, her rock. I'll take care of it, Mama, she said firmly. Stay where you are. Ava ended the call, stood up, and walked out of the meeting without a word. Everyone in the room fell silent. Her assistant followed, holding a tablet. Sensing that something serious was happening, Ava stepped into her office and shut the door. She told her assistant, I need legal, I need PR, I need aviation analytics. Now, within minutes, her team was moving. Her legal department gathered every document related to their current and upcoming investment deals with airlines. Her public relations director started scanning for mentions of the incident on social media. Her analysts pulled up all data regarding the airline her mother had flown with. Ava sat at her desk and opened her email. She asked her mother to forward every detail: her boarding pass, the flight number, the names of staff if she had caught any, and if possible, any pictures or videos. While waiting, Ava remembered something important. Her firm, Ellis Global, had committed a large investment in that airline's expansion plan, a $5 billion deal to help them build new international routes, expand their fleet, and develop luxury terminals. $5 billion, and they had humiliated her mother without reason. Soon, the data started arriving. Her team confirmed the $5 billion stake her firm was preparing to release in phases over the next 2 years. She also got internal reports on the airline's behavior over the last few years. What she read was disturbing. It wasn't just about her mother. There had been several reports quietly settled, never making big news, about how black and brown passengers were treated unfairly. People in economy seats being asked to prove their tickets. First-class passengers being questioned if they belonged. Staff flagging passengers for extra checks based on vague reasons like acting suspicious or looking nervous. The pattern was clear. Discrimination wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a hidden system. Ava knew what she had to do. She first called a closed-door meeting with her firm's core board members. She didn't yell. She simply showed them the facts, how the airline had treated her mother, what the numbers said, and what the public already suspected. She told them she was putting a hold on the $5 billion deal. We are not doing business with a company that doesn't respect people who look like us, she said. If my mother isn't safe in first class, how can we trust them with our money, our name, or our values? The room was silent for a moment. Then one by one, the board members nodded. Ava didn't demand loyalty, she inspired it. Her calm logic, her steady leadership, and the obvious injustice made the decision clear. She then called her PR director. We're going public, she said. Her team asked if she wanted to make a statement or give an interview. Ava shook her head. Not yet. First, I want the facts to speak. Pull all the data, highlight every pattern, use real reports, real cases. Show the world this isn't just about my mother. It's about all the people they treated like they didn't belong. Over the next few hours, her team created a powerful report. It included not just what had happened to Martha Ellis, but dozens of other cases with similar complaints. The language was respectful, but firm. The message was clear. This is unacceptable, and it's time for change. Meanwhile, the airline had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. They hadn't even realized who they had kicked off the plane. To them, Martha was just another older black woman in a seat they didn't expect her to have. They didn't know that by treating her with disrespect, they had just poked the wrong. As the report neared completion, Ava made one final decision. She would write an open letter, not as a CEO, not as a business leader, but as a daughter. She sat at her desk, took a deep breath, and wrote, "My mother is not a threat. She is the reason I exist, the reason I lead, and the reason $5 billion just walked away from your airline." The letter continued with calm, strong words. Ava didn't call names. She didn't insult. She simply told the truth, that her mother had been mistreated, that the airline had failed to protect dignity, and that, as someone responsible for where major investments go, she was choosing to invest in companies that treated every person with respect, no matter their age, color, or seat number. The letter was powerful, personal. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about making sure companies understood. If you mistreat people, especially the most vulnerable, there will be consequences. She didn't release it yet. Not yet. She wanted it to drop at the right moment. But already, the plan was in motion. Back at the airport, Martha had no idea what her daughter was doing. She was finally on a new flight, thanks to a kind airport manager who, once he realized the situation, apologized quietly and helped her rebook. But no one from the airline's leadership reached out. No one offered an explanation. She flew quietly to New York. Thinking her daughter might send a letter of complaint or write to customer service, she had no idea that Ava was about to shake the very core of the airline industry. The story was no longer just about a single flight. It was about something much bigger, about how money, power, and influence could be used not for silence, but for justice. And the world was about to find out what happens when a powerful woman doesn't stay quiet when her mother is disrespected. Inside Ava Ellis's office, the atmosphere had completely changed. What had started as a normal business day had now turned into something far more serious. Everyone on her team could feel it. There was no shouting, no chaos, but there was pressure in the air, like something heavy was about to happen. Ava was focused, calm, and sharper than ever. Her mother's quiet pain had lit a fire inside her, and now she was fully in action mode. She called another internal meeting with her top executives. This time, there were no numbers to discuss, no profits or projections. Only one topic was on the table: the airline that had removed her mother from the plane and embarrassed her in front of everyone. Ava stood in front of the room with a large digital screen behind her. On it were images and reports from the last few years. Her voice was clear and calm as she began to speak. "This is not about one mistake," she said. "This is about a pattern." Her team watched as she showed a series of complaints filed by passengers over the past 5 years. Names had been removed for privacy, but the experiences were chilling. A black couple in first class had been asked if they were in the right seats. A Muslim woman was pulled out of the boarding line because someone felt uncomfortable. A Hispanic man was removed from a plane because he looked nervous. None of these people had broken any rules. All had proper tickets. But all were treated like suspects. "These are not coincidences," Ava continued. "This is systemic." One executive raised his hand. "Are we absolutely sure we want to walk away from this deal? $5 billion. That's a huge shift." Ava nodded. "Yes, because if we continue to support a company like this, we're saying it's okay. And it's not okay." Another team member spoke. "The airline will panic when they hear this. They're already depending on our funding for their next expansion project. If we pull out, their plans will collapse." Ava didn't smile, but her voice stayed calm. "Then let them collapse." Outside of that room, the airline's top executives were completely unaware. They were celebrating a recent increase in bookings, finalizing new international routes, and working on luxury lounge designs. No one at the top had received any warning. No one had even told them about the passenger they removed from the plane. To them, it had been just another incident not worth attention. But things were already moving behind the scenes. Ava's PR team released a quiet but firm internal memo to their investment partners, stating that Ellis Global was reviewing its aviation investments and would be delaying any upcoming releases of capital. The news didn't seem like much at first, just a cautious financial move. But it sent small ripples through the financial world. Analysts started wondering why a major player like Ava's firm would pause a $5 billion investment. Was there a problem? Then Ava's legal team got to work. They reviewed every clause in the agreement with the airline, looking for escape routes. Luckily, Ava had insisted on including a line in the contract months earlier, allowing her company to cancel funding if the airline's actions conflicted with Ellis Global's ethical standards. That one sentence gave her the power to walk away. While legal experts worked, Eva called in her analytics team. "I want everything," she said. "I want customer service data. I want complaint records. I want the names of board members. Want their public statements on race, on equity, on safety. I want to know how they handle employee training. Dig as deep as you can." The analysts worked through the night. Didn't just search public records. They contacted former employees, customer rights groups, and even airport staff who had seen how things were really handled. And what they found confirmed Eva's worst fears. The airline had a serious problem with bias, black and brown. Passengers were far more likely to be pulled for random checks. Staff training on cultural sensitivity was outdated and weak. Complaints were often ignored or quietly settled with small offers of frequent flyer points. Some flight attendants had even written anonymous blogs about how they were discouraged from arguing with suspicious passengers, which often meant treating non-white passengers differently. Eva didn't react with anger. She reacted with strategy. She asked her PR director to prepare a campaign, not just a press release. "We're not just making a statement," she said. "We're going to educate the public. We're going to tell a story, because this isn't just about us. It's about every person who's ever been told they don't belong." She reviewed early drafts of the messaging. It was powerful. It focused on human dignity, on fairness, on what it meant to create a truly equal society Eva wanted to make. Sure, people saw her mother as more than just a victim. She wanted Martha to be a symbol of quiet strength and grace. "We are not looking for pity," Eva said. "We are asking for change." Meanwhile, rumors were starting to spread. Small financial news blogs picked up on the investment delay. Some began speculating about a possible scandal. One article guessed that a senior executive's family member had been mistreated by the airline. Another guessed it had something to do with racial profiling. The pieces weren't connected yet, but it was only a matter of time. Back at the airline's headquarters, middle manager finally saw one of the online videos showing Martha being escorted off the plane. He forwarded it to his boss, saying, "You might want to take a look at this." Still, no one at the top reacted. They thought it was just another online post that would disappear in a day or two. They had no idea that the woman in the video was connected to the same person who controlled billions of dollars that their company desperately needed. Eva, on the other hand, had her plan nearly complete. She gathered her executive team one more time. She stood at the front of the room again, this time with a map showing the airline's planned global expansion. They wanted to build new airports, open more routes, reach more customers. But they forgot something, she said. They forgot. That business is not just about numbers, it's about people. She paused and looked around the room, and if you can't treat people with respect, you don't deserve to grow. Her team agreed. Later that day, Eva scheduled a press release for the following week, but she knew something even more powerful was coming. Her open letter. She had written it herself, in the quiet of her home, late at night. It was only 2 pages long, but every word was carefully chosen. She didn't blame the entire airline. She didn't call for boycotts or outrage. She simply told the truth. She told the story of her mother, how she had been treated, how she had felt, and why Eva could no longer stand by in silence. "My mother raised me to believe in kindness." The letter read, "She taught me to sit quietly when I needed to, listen, and to stand firmly when I needed to act. I am standing now." She didn't name the airline, but she didn't have to. Everyone in the industry would know. She ended the letter with a message that sent chills through her team when they first read it. "If my mother's 74 years old, soft-spoken, carrying nothing but a book can, be seen as a threat in a first class, then no seat is safe. And if no seat is safe, no deal is safe either." Eva scheduled the letter to go live 2 days after the initial press release. She wanted it to hit at the exact moment the airline would start feeling the pressure. From investors and media, she wasn't just making a move, she was sending a message. By the time her letter reached the public, Eva would not only change the way people looked at one airline sheet, would challenge the entire industry to take a long, hard look at how they treated people. And she wasn't done yet, because this was not just about her mother. This was about power, about how to use it and who you use it for. Tuesday morning came quietly, but the world didn't stay quiet for long. At exactly 9 a.m., Ava Ellis's open letter was posted on her company's official website and shared on all major business networks. It was also published on her personal social media account, where millions of people followed her for leadership advice and business insights. The post was simple black letters on a white background. No pictures, no logos, no shouting. But the words inside were louder than any scream. In the first paragraph, Ava gently told the world what had happened to her mother. She didn't use dramatic language. She just described how her 74-year-old mother, a retired school teacher, was removed from a plane for no clear reason. She explained how her mother had followed every rule, held a valid first-class ticket, showed proper ID, still was treated like she didn't belong. Then Ava dropped the line that would be repeated by the media for weeks: "My mother is not a threat. She is the reason I exist, the reason I lead, and the reason $5 billion just walked away from your airline." That one sentence hit like thunder. People around the world started sharing the letter. News stations picked it up. Business channels stopped regular reporting to cover the story. Social media exploded. Within hours, the post had over 10 million views. By the end of the day, it had been translated into more than 30 languages. At first, the airline didn't react. They saw the post, but their leadership team thought they could manage it. They assumed the news cycle would move on. But they had no idea how powerful Ava's name was. She wasn't just a successful businesswoman, she was one of the most respected voices in the world of finance. Investors listened to her. Governments listened. Other companies followed her example, and now she was making a stand not with anger, but with action. By mid-afternoon, the airline's phone lines were full of reporters asking for a statement. Shareholders began calling board members asking if the $5 billion deal was really falling apart. Some customers started canceling their upcoming flights. Others posted online about their own experiences with discrimination on flight stories that had never gotten attention before. A group of young activists made a video montage using Ava's letter and clips from interviews with passengers who had faced racial profiling at airports. The video went viral. One part of the video showed Martha Ellis quietly sitting in a waiting area at the airport, holding her purse in her lap. The caption read, "She didn't raise her voice, so her daughter raised the world." Inside the airline's boardroom, panic finally began. The CEO of the airline, a tall silver-haired man named James Monroe, stared at his screen as he read the letter again and again. He didn't know what to say. He had never met Martha Ellis. He had never even heard about the incident until now. No one had told him. In his world, passengers came and went. Flights were on time or delayed. And problems were handled quietly behind closed doors. But this time, silence wasn't enough. His phone rang again and again. The board members demanded answers. They wanted to know how this had happened, who was responsible, why had no one reported the incident, and most importantly, was the deal with Ellis Global really dead? Behind the scenes, Ava's decision was already causing damage. Stock prices for the airline began to dip. At first, it was just a few cents. Then investors started pulling out, afraid that public trust was broken. Travel blogs started writing about the story, advising readers to avoid flying with the airline. Business magazines praised Ava's strength and called it a new era of values-based leadership. One headline read, "She didn't shout, she just took her $5 billion and walked away." Back in Ava's office, she watched the reaction unfold quietly. Her team gathered around her, checking emails, social media, and news alerts. Her assistant turned to her and said, "It's working. People are paying attention." Ava nodded, but didn't celebrate. "This isn't about getting attention," she said. "It's about making them listen." That afternoon, the airline finally released a short public statement. It was cold, full of business words like regret and review. They didn't mention Ava or Martha by name, simply said they were aware of an incident and were looking into it. People were not impressed. The response felt too weak, too late. Ava's supporters called it empty and unacceptable. Then something unexpected happened. An employee from the airline's staff, an anonymous gate agent, sent a private email to a reporter. In the message, the staff member said they remembered the day Martha was pulled off the plane. They admitted there was no real reason to remove her. Security staff had reacted because she didn't look like someone who should be in first class. That sentence, "She didn't look like someone who should be in first class," was shared like wildfire. It confirmed what everyone had already felt in their hearts. It wasn't about the ticket, it was about what Martha looked like. That night, Ava finally agreed to a short interview with a respected journalist. She didn't appear angry or emotional. She spoke with strength and calm. She said, "This isn't about revenge. This is about accountability. If a company takes our money, they also take our values. If they break those values, we have to walk away." The interview became a trending video around the world. People praised Ava for standing up without yelling, for defending her mother with dignity, for using her power to make a real difference. Celebrities, business leaders, and politicians started commenting in support. Some shared their own experiences with racism while traveling. A few big names even offered to invest with Ava's firm instead of the airline. Meanwhile, the airline's damage control team was overwhelmed. Every time they tried to put out the fire, another spark lit up. Shareholders were threatening lawsuits. Their social media team couldn't keep up with the messages. Employees were whispering in hallways, unsure of how safe their jobs were. Then, something major happened. Another investor, one of the airline's top 5 backers, announced they were reevaluating their relationship with the company. That meant millions more could be pulled out. Other investors followed, afraid of being connected to a company now seen as unethical. The airline's board finally held an emergency meeting. Inside that room, tempers flared. Some members wanted the CEO to step down. Others demanded a full investigation. A few suggested flying to New York to meet Ava in person and beg her to return to the deal. But Ava had already moved on. She didn't need their money. She had bigger plans now. The next morning, Ava's company announced a brand new Project Han investment initiative worth $5 billion, focused entirely on supporting minority-owned businesses in the transportation and travel industries. The news shocked everyone. She wasn't just punishing the airline, she was building something better in its place, and the world noticed. News stations praised her vision. Commentators called it one of the boldest moves in corporate history. And people everywhere felt inspired by the idea that power could be used to lift others. It's not just grow profits. But perhaps the most powerful moment came later that week. A video surfaced of Martha Ellis arriving at her daughter's office. She looked quiet and calm, as always. Reporters tried to speak with her, but she simply smiled and said, "My daughter is doing what she believes is right. I'm proud of her." That one sentence was shared even more than Ava's. People saw in Martha the true heart of the story, a woman who had been treated unfairly, but who still held her head high. A woman who had raised a daughter strong enough to fight a billion-dollar battle with nothing but truth and win. The storm Ava Ellis had quietly started was now too big for anyone to ignore. The airline had tried to act like nothing serious had happened, but the truth had already spread too far and too fast. The people had seen the truth, and more importantly, they had felt it. And once people feel something deeply, there's no going back. Inside the airline's headquarters, everything was falling apart. Board members were blaming each other. Some said the CEO should have responded earlier. Others said security staff were to blame. A few even wondered if they could somehow fix things by offering a public deal to Ava. But that hope faded when they saw what Ava did next. Instead of returning to the table with the airline, Ava looked elsewhere. She announced that the $5 billion she had taken from the deal would now be used to create something new, a massive investment program that would support minority-owned travel, transport, and tech companies. Small airlines run by Black and Latino entrepreneurs, apps created by women in the travel industry, airport service companies run by veterans and people of color. All of them would now get funding, support, and exposure that they had never received before. This move shocked the business world. No one had seen it coming. Most expected Ava to stay silent or negotiate behind closed doors. But she had done the opposite. She had made the injustice public and then used the fallout to help others rise. She hadn't just punished the airline, she had changed the direction of her money, power, and future to build something better. Something that truly represented her values. People everywhere felt the impact. News outlets praised her for being bold. Business leaders admitted they were inspired and even a little embarrassed. Some of them had faced similar situations, but had chosen to stay quiet. Ava hadn't. She had chosen the harder path, the path of real change. The pressure on the airline became unbearable. Her stock price dropped every day. News of employees quitting began to leak. More customers canceled flights. Protests were held outside their main offices. And most damaging of all, more people started sharing their own stories of mistreatment and discrimination while flying. Each new story confirmed what Ava had already said: this wasn't just one bad incident. This was a broken system. Finally, the airline gave in. In a dramatic press conference, the company's board announced that their CEO, James Monroe, was stepping down. They also said they would create a new department to deal with customer discrimination complaints, start a diversity oversight board, and invest millions in employee retraining. But people weren't easily impressed anymore. The apology seemed forced. The promises felt like they were made just to stop the bleeding. And the public could tell the difference between real change and damage control. A few days later, the airline's new temporary CEO requested a private meeting with Ava Ellis. He sent an email saying, "We'd like to make this right, and we believe it should begin with a conversation." Ava didn't respond for 2 days. Then she sent a short, powerful reply. "You had the chance to make things right when no one was watching. You chose silence. Now the world is watching, and you want peace. My peace is with those who never had a seat at your table in the first place." With that, the conversation ended. Ava didn't need their apology. Her actions had already spoken louder than their words ever could. Back in New York, Ava and her mother sat together in the garden behind Ava's house. It was a quiet afternoon. The sun was warm and the wind was soft. Birds chirped in the trees, and the smell of fresh flowers filled the air. Martha looked over at her daughter. "I still can't believe all this happened just because of that flight," she said softly. Ava smiled gently. "Didn't happen because of the flight. It happened because of how they treated you, and how they've treated people like you." "For years," Martha nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "But what you did, Ava, you didn't yell, you didn't scream, you just stood tall." Ava looked at her mother, and there was pride in her eyes. "Out. You taught me that, Mama." For the next few weeks, the media continued to follow the story. But slowly, things began to shift. Tension moved from the airline's fall to the rise of the new businesses that Ava had started funding.
Airline's nice.
Headlines now focused on stories of success: a Black-owned private jet company in Atlanta, a Latina-founded travel app that helped women find safe travel destinations, a young engineer who had created an AI-powered luggage tracking system. All of them now had Ava's support, and with it, the chance to grow. Ava began to visit these businesses, give speeches, and even mentor young leaders. She didn't make the story about her. She made it about everyone who had ever felt like they didn't belong. She told them, the world isn't always fair, but that doesn't mean we can't change it. Her message reached schools, universities, and small companies around the world. People used her story to teach young students about courage, justice, and how to stand up without shouting. A few schools even started using her letter as part of their leadership and ethics classes. Months later, the airline still hadn't recovered fully. Their numbers were slowly improving, but trust was gone. Trust is harder to rebuild than money one day. A young woman traveling on a different airline smiled as she boarded a plane. She saw that the cabin crew looked more diverse. The gate agents were friendlier. The whole atmosphere felt different. She posted online, not sure if it's real change or just fear, but flying feels a little better since Ava Ellis stood up. And that's what real power looks like, not when fear makes people act better for a moment, but when truth inspires them to do better forever. Martha never asked for revenge. Ava never wanted to destroy. She simply wanted dignity to be respected. Something that should have been automatic, not earned. Now, Everywhere Martha went, people greeted her with respect. Some called her the mother of the movement. Others simply said, "Thank you for raising her right." But she stayed humble, smiling softly and replying, "She did all the work. I just reminded her who she is." In the end, the story wasn't about a plane, a ticket, or a seat in first class. It was about a seat at the table, a place in the world, and how, when that place is taken away unjustly, the right person can make sure the whole table gets rebuilt better for everyone. Ava Ellis didn't break the system. She forced it to look in the mirror, and then she gave the world something stronger than money or fame. She gave it a new standard, one that said, no matter who you are, no matter where you sit, you deserve respect, and that truth once spoken can never be taken away.